Okay, picture this. You're sitting in a dark room, an old, boxy television set is flickering in the corner, and a chunky plastic cable remote drops heavily onto your coffee table. Now, suddenly, the screen shifts. A glowing, high-definition interface lights up the whole room, instantly bringing with it the incredibly vibrant worlds of Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, and National Geographic. For literally decades, Disney had absolute, unquestioned rule over global entertainment. I mean, they owned the stories, they owned the iconic characters, and they held an iron grip on the massive franchises that shaped our childhoods. Their cultural and financial dominance, it felt completely invincible. But then, the entire entertainment world flipped on its head. The rules of the game were completely rewritten overnight by Silicon Valley, and suddenly, century-old empires were staring down the barrel of irrelevance. So in this explainer, we are going to unpack a truly cinematic corporate deep dive, the story of how the ultimate legacy media titan entered the most brutal platform war in history.
So, here is the massive existential question we have to ask. Audiences were completely shifting away from scheduled television, right? Streaming had become the new bloody battlefield. And that brought legacy media companies face to face with a terrifying crisis. It's the classic innovator's dilemma, just playing out on a multi-billion-dollar scale. Think about it from their perspective. Do you sit back, heavily protect your incredibly lucrative traditional television and box office revenues, and just slowly bleed out as tech companies steal your audience? Or do you aggressively build the digital future, knowing full well that doing so means you have to actively cannibalize your own highly profitable legacy business? Disney's answer to this crisis was to basically take a sledgehammer to their own empire and completely restructure it.
All right, let's dive into this. Section 1. The old power model. The era of control. Remember when watching a movie was fundamentally a waiting game? It was an era built on physical friction. You actually had to stand in long cinema queues to see the latest release. We all paid these massive, bloated monthly fees for cable TV bundles just to get the 2 or 3 channels we actually wanted to watch. We built up these huge physical libraries of DVDs and VHS tapes taking up space in our living rooms, and we literally planned our evenings around waiting for our favorite shows to air at a highly specific time. But the digital revolution, it completely rewired our psychology. Viewers suddenly craved absolute frictionlessness. We wanted everything on demand, housed within sleep apps, giving us instant access from anywhere on the planet. We didn't want to own physical media anymore, we just wanted seamless access to it.
Now, to truly understand the stakes here, to grasp what Disney was actually risking, we have to talk about the economic engine that powered their entire empire, the Disney flywheel. Traditionally, Disney's power came from controlling a piece of super valuable intellectual property and distributing it through a perfectly sequenced chain of controlled, highly profitable windows. A blockbuster film starts in cinemas, right? Brings in billions. Then, boom, it moves to home entertainment for a second massive payday. Then it gets licensed out to television networks, sparks endless lines of toys and merchandise, inspires brand new roller coasters at theme parks, and eventually funds a whole slate of sequels. It was a masterpiece. One single story created a massive perpetual loop of guaranteed revenue. So choosing to break this perfect money-making machine to enter the chaotic, unpredictable streaming market, that was corporate heresy. It meant literally walking away from billions in guaranteed licensing checks.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Netflix problem or the inciting incident.
Look, the threat here was immediate, and it was severe. Netflix had definitively proven that streaming wasn't just some passing tech fad. It was a permanent shift in global entertainment habits. They trained the whole world to expect entire seasons dropped at once, endless binge viewing, and algorithmically personalized recommendations, all for one flat, low monthly fee. But what's really interesting here is the true existential terror for Disney. Netflix was building this massive, world-dominating empire using Disney's own movies. Every single time Disney licensed a Marvel film or a classic animated hit to Netflix, they were just making the tech giant stronger. They were making Netflix more indispensable to families. The terrifying realization finally set in. If Netflix ultimately owned the interface and the billing relationship with the customer, Disney risked being relegated to nothing more than a wholesale supplier of content. They would lose their direct connection to you and me entirely. No way could they let that happen.
So, Section 3. Entering the platform war. The counterattack.
In November 2019, at their monumental Investor Day, Disney stopped supplying the enemy and went on a massive offensive. And this brilliantly illustrates their strategy. They announced a launch price of just $6.99 a month. It was a strategic bomb dropped directly onto the entertainment industry. It vastly undercut the competitors and completely stunned Wall Street analysts, who, by the way, fully expected a premium price tag for access to Disney's legendary Premium Vault.
This wasn't merely a new product launch. This was a scorched earth declaration of war. They made absolutely sure the platform was available seamlessly across your phone, your smart TV, your gaming console, boasting high definition and 4K capabilities right out of the gate. They had to feel incredibly modern instantly. Because they weren't fighting slow-moving traditional television networks anymore, they were going toe-to-toe with the biggest titans in Silicon Valley.
Let's look at Section 4, the franchise retention engine, the arsenal.
Now, in the ruthless, brutal economics of streaming, the deadliest enemy you face is churn. That's the industry term for when a subscriber signs up, binges one massive hit show over a weekend, and immediately cancels their subscription. Disney understood early on that while a single hit show might acquire a customer, you need an expansive ecosystem to actually retain them. So they weaponized their unparalleled portfolio of mega franchises to build this incredibly sticky walled garden of content. You've got Marvel providing these sprawling, interconnected superhero ecosystems where you literally have to watch everything to keep up with the plot. Star Wars brings deep, multi-generational loyalty. Pixar delivers that reliable, highly rewatchable emotional family storytelling. The Classic Vault provides just decades of pure nostalgia. And National Geographic rounds out the whole package with premium factual entertainment. The strategy is incredibly potent. Think about it. If the parents just finished a Star Wars series, the kids are probably halfway through a Pixar movie. The household simply cannot justify hitting that cancel button. Content isn't just entertainment here, it is retention.
Section 5, the economics of streaming, the climax.
So, the crucial point we need to ground ourselves in is the gritty reality of the business. The transition into the digital era required absolutely staggering amounts of capital. Entering this streaming war was agonizingly expensive. Initially, the whole industry was gripped by this absolute obsession with growth at all costs. Every single platform was out there chasing sheer subscriber numbers, completely ignoring the billions of dollars bleeding out from their balance sheets. Disney was no different. They poured astronomical sums into server technology, global marketing rollouts, and massive exclusive production budgets. But eventually, Wall Street's patience snapped. The financial markets completely stopped rewarding pure growth and started heavily punishing unprofitability. The mandate violently shifted overnight. The entire direct-to-consumer division had to pivot from a money-burning expansion phase into a strict, disciplined, profitable business model. Growth without profit, simply not sustainable.
Now, we have to acknowledge that the initial phase of that mandate, capturing the audience, was an overwhelming, undeniable triumph. Building a paid audience of 132 million global subscribers from absolute scratch by September 2025 is historically unprecedented. It was a massive feat of customer acquisition that just proved the sheer gravitational pull of the Disney brand, even in a highly saturated, incredibly competitive market.
But surviving the war requires way more than just a massive headcount. The metric that actually matters? Profitability. Generating $375 million in operating income in the fourth quarter of fiscal 2025 meant executing some deeply unpopular, highly scrutinized strategies. To hit that number, they had to introduce severe price hikes. They had to launch advertising-supported subscription tiers. They had to implement harsh crackdowns on password sharing. This right here represents the ultimate tension in modern digital business. You are constantly balancing a frictionless, happy user experience against the brutal realities of bottom-line capitalism. The agonizing pivot from pure growth to actual profitability proved successful for Disney, but we have to admit, it fundamentally changed the platform's relationship with its users. Which brings us to Section 6, the legacy media dilemma, the new normal. This is the strategic agony of cannibalization that literally every legacy entertainment executive is facing today. Look at the stark contrast. The old business model, linear cable networks, and traditional box office windows. It still generates massive cash flow. It is a highly profitable, heavily managed decline. But the modern streaming world operates on entirely different physics. Cinema thrives on massive event value and opening weekend hype. Digital platforms survive solely on daily user habits and algorithmically driven engagement. It's wild. Traditional giants have to balance on this terrifying razor's edge. They have to carefully milk the old declining system to fund the incredibly expensive new streaming reality, and they have to do it all without destroying their traditional golden goose prematurely.
Let's move to how this all builds into the major lessons here. Disney's massive corporate transformation is a masterclass in modern survival. First, it proves that a company absolutely must proactively disrupt its own highly profitable business model before some outside tech startup does it for them. Second, owning incredible intellectual property just isn't enough anymore. Owning the direct, Building relationship with the customer, that is the true locus of power in the modern economy. Third, it shows exactly how legacy ecosystems can be weaponized into anti-churn engines. Fourth, it highlights how the brutal reality of the financial markets will inevitably force a necessary, often super painful pivot from explosive growth to sustainable profitability. And finally, winning the digital war requires building deeply interconnected emotional ecosystems, not just sleek application technology.
So, what does this all mean for us? Take a look around your own living room tonight. Look at your screens. Think about your own daily viewing habits. Legacy strength and a century of history simply aren't enough to guarantee survival anymore. In this new era, as the dust of the platform wars begins to settle, you really have to ask yourself, who